One of my friends in my D&D group 3D printed me some little D&D figures before the last session. So today I'm going to paint them. This is my character. Her name is Sherry Longfeet. She is a Goliath and she's former military and she's a paladin, but she's pretty cool. She's pretty much a tank. The armor plus the shield she has gives her 25 AC. And this is the new winter wolf that she just got. His name is Snowball. He's not as much of a tank, but he's pretty cool. And he's coming on adventures with us. So the first thing I did was get him armor, which hasn't helped too much because he still keeps getting injured on the first battle. But Snowball needs to be very white with black armor, and then Sherry needs to look not whatever this color is. It actually looks better on camera. In real life, it's kind of like an orangey beige. It is so cool that I have them both, and it's time to paint them. I don't have any D&D specific paints, so we're gonna be painting them with some gel nail polish because that is what I do have, and hopefully it will stick. In an attempt to follow some nail prep protocols, I tried to sand this and then wipe it down with alcohol, but some bad news already. I accidentally broke Snowball's leg while I was trying to sand it. Actually, I already finished sanding it. I was just trying to wipe down any dirt. So we're gonna glue this back together before we continue. Thankfully, this should have some nail glue in it. Yes, thank God. Wow. This is more intense of a brush than I expected. Sorry, Snowball. Uh-oh. Okay, I don't think I put enough glue on, or it already dried. Okay, that better be enough glue. I don't even have the excuse of having fat fingers for this. I'm just a disaster. Ooh, that's not working. Plan B, because the nail glue is not doing it. It's sticking to my finger, just not itself, which is low-key funny. We have some like builder gel that might work. Well, that didn't work. You're not really supposed to touch this with your hands, but too late. This maybe works. We're just gonna pretend his armor on this arm is thicker. He will be able to stand up too. So we're gonna just cure this for a minute. It's going into the hospital. In 60 seconds, Snowball should be cured. Less than 5 minutes breaking this. I brought them home in this little container so it wouldn't break. 3 seconds of trying to paint it, broken. Probably should not have this near the light and open. Oh, I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty solid. Ta-da! Oh, you can't see that. Look, still stands up too. Does it look a little janky? Yes, but it's back. Now, for painting, we're starting with Snowball. So we'll paint Snowball standing up so he can cure correctly. I'm gonna try and wipe him without breaking any more legs. Whoop, I did just spill alcohol on my couch, but it's okay. Not the first time anything's been spilled here. That's as clean as we're getting for fear of breaking him more. I think he'll only need 2 coats, but we don't want it to be too thick. I learned that from painting my nails, actually. Since the prep didn't go too well, I was excited to just get started painting it. I really should have smoothed it out though, because if you know 3D prints, they often have lines all over them, which make the surface really rough and uneven. And I thought that could provide a cool look in terms of fur, but it was so hard to get it painted evenly because, of course, all the paint wanted to go into the grooves and everything, which left some areas really covered and some areas not covered at all. I also absolutely should have been wearing gloves for this whole process. I literally have plastic gloves that I bought for doing my nails, but I just kept being like, oh, I'm not going to touch it that much. And then I touched it when I was putting on the builder gel to reattach the leg. And then I, of course, touched it a bunch while I was painting. Because initially I was like, oh, I'm going to paint part of it and then put it in the light. And then I'll paint part of it and then put it in the light. And I'm not going to touch uncured paint. But then when it actually was happening, I certainly did not feel like putting this in the light every 3 seconds. So you just saw that I painted the entire thing before putting it in the light. I also ran the light like 3 different times apparently, but I cut that out because it was super boring. But I continued painting it and I continued touching wet paint because I really had to do a second coat over the entire thing. I think I was expecting 2 coats, but I was also expecting 2 coats to provide a lot more coverage than it did. Like, it was good enough, I think, but it was a little patchy in some areas. I like to gaslight myself into thinking that it looked more like real fur, but in reality, I was probably just being a little bit lazy because it was really hard to get it even, and I honestly wasn't sure it would look any better if I kept piling paint on more and more and more, because the other thing about gel paint is that it's kind of thick. So while I am getting rid of the ridges with it, I'm also getting rid of a lot of the small details, and it just kind of turns more of a blob the more and more and more paint you get. This was my first time painting any sort of small figurine like this. I guess I have done a little bit of design on actual nails, but very simple. So this was definitely a learning experience. I started with Snowball because he was going to be a lot more simple than the actual figure that I needed to paint, which had a ton of detail in terms of like what she was carrying, her shield, her clothing, everything like that. Snowball, he does have armor, but he's mainly white with a little bit of black. So that seemed like it was going to be infinitely easier to paint than like an actual person with tiny, tiny details. So I'm glad I started with Snowball because it was a great place to learn how hard this is, and I might need smaller brushes or more detailed process or something to get Sherry to look good. I think he turned out all right, which you'll see in a minute or two, but definitely there are some places where I could have improved. Overall, though, I love Snowball's little figure, both as a figure, but I also love his little character in the game. Sherry had initially had some type of mastiff that you can just buy at any store, but he died in one of the campaigns, which is really a bummer. But since then, I've been wanting to get her another pet, but a magical pet, because I didn't want my pet to die every single campaign, because that would be kind of bad, you know? So I was on the lookout for a type of magical pet you could buy at some of the D&D stores, and eventually I found a winter wolf in one of these stores. It took a while to get it because I had to kind of pre-order it, if that made sense. Basically, I put a deposit in when Snowball was a very little puppy, and then they trained him for me. So I picked him up like a month or two later. But I ended up with a fully trained Winterwolf, which, if you know about D&D, is very difficult because they're normally wild creatures that are very mean. They're also pretty strong too, though. Like, Snowball has a bite that he can use, as well as a cold breath he can use for a lot of battles, which is really cool. And the cold breath has a recharge that I've never seen before. I've seen like long rest and spell slots and short rest and stuff like that. But Snowball's recharge is rolling a 5 or a 6 for in battle. Like, if I want to use it twice in the same battle, and then it recharges automatically for new battles, because theoretically you could just roll as many times as you want until you got a 5 or a 6 if you're not in battle. So that was really cool. And another thing I learned while having Snowball, most of his traits were like pre-picked out. I did get to increase his armor class with the armor that I bought, but I did also have to roll to make sure he would be willing to wear armor, and I rolled well enough, so he has no problem with the armor he's wearing. Or I have a collar that is a collar for Snowball and a bracelet for Sherry, and we can share HP. Well, I can give Snowball HP if he's about to not be okay. So, yeah, Snowball is very indestructible, as much as you can be indestructible in D&D, and he's a cool companion to bring along, especially because my actual character is a Goliath. So I feel like a Winterwolf is kind of the perfect companion for a Goliath, since Goliaths are huge, Winterwolves are huge. He might actually look like a regular sized dog compared to my Goliath character. And I also, small little details that I painted on this where I gave him like a mouth, of course. I gave him blue eyes because that was specified. And then I gave him little pink paw pads. And it was absolutely not necessary, but I think it's really cute. I finished Snowball. I think for my first tiny painting, he came out pretty good. He's a little patchy in areas, but I kind of think that makes him look more realistic. But yeah, I gave him little blue eyes. Oh, I forgot to give him a nose. I'm giving him a nose. I guess it'll be over the top coat. We're doing a black nose. Just the tiniest little bit. Wait, that's super cute. He has a nose now. He's really cute. Not like the most detailed, but he looks good enough. Next time, I'm gonna paint Sherry. But Snowball is done. He is a little uneven. That should help. He does kind of look like he's wearing a black t-shirt. I realize he kind of looks like a polar bear, but I think he's kind of cute. Up close, you can really see all the imperfections though.